Ciao a tutti e benvenuti al tavolo italiano. Hello everybody and welcome to the Italian table. This is the second installment of the series Tips and Tricks for Learning Italian. What we're going to talk about today is the first in the list of the tips, which is the first mistake. What do I mean by the first mistake? Well, when we want to learn another language, before we actually start the work on it, especially, we get real excited about the idea of being able to speak another language. We imagine what it would be like. We fantasize, if you would. And we want to know how to say things. We want to know how to comprehend. We envision ourselves being someone like out of the Warren Identity, where he can walk into a different country and he's conversing immediately with somebody else. And so that's the kind of stuff we want to learn. Well, in reality, if you really want to learn a language, even if you want to learn phrases, it's very, very important to learn things like the alphabet and pronunciation, especially pronunciation. Even if you want to learn phrases, or if you don't really want to learn Italian, you just want to buy a phrase book and take it along, if you can't say it the way that it's pronounced in that country, they may still not understand what you're saying, even though you have a book right there in your hands. So the attitude becomes something like, really? This is really nothing, very easy, and I can't see putting a lot of time into this. I can hardly wait until I'm learning something that'll teach me how to speak Italian. Or as I like to say, waiting for the good stuff before becoming engaged. Like I said, the first thing I like to teach anybody when I teach Italian, especially those that want to do more than just learn a few phrases, is the Italian alphabet and the rules of pronunciation. Although I highly recommend it, once again, for everybody, as I discussed a little bit earlier. I consider this topic so important that I even created a 6-week course on just that. When I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, it was actually a hit when we introduced it, and we typically had a great time at those classes. Why is it so important to put the time and the energy into this and other fundamental information? Because number one, we're creatures of habit. So if this is where you're going to start learning a language, and I really recommend that you do, or if you've never really gotten a grip on it, you're already studying the language, then I recommend you go back and work on it. How we study these fundamental things is how we're going to study other things going on. As I said, we're creatures of habit. I heard one time that if you do something consecutively for 21 days, it's more apt to become a habit. So if when you begin studying, you're studying these fundamental principles of a language, maybe a few words here and there, sentences maybe you're not going to use. I remember in Rosetta Stone, one of the first phrases I learned was the boy runs. Il bambino corre. Well, when am I going to say the boy runs, right? But so if you don't put the time and effort into those fundamentals, then chances are you're really not going to put the time and effort into what you're studying later on, because you're forming those habits, if you would. You're routing your synapses. And so when you sit down to study, you're going to do what you've done up to that point. The second thing is a solid foundation is much easier to build on. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's at work. If you're someone that's responsible for putting processes and procedures in place, executing the work is much easier if you have those processes and procedures in place. When I used to teach salsa and rumba dancing, and there's a thing called muscle memory. So we would start by teaching the basic steps, and then we would continue to review the basic steps. And the reason why is once you get into the fancier stuff, the twirls, the catching, things of that nature, you could focus on what you needed to do to learn the fancier items, and you weren't worried about the basic steps because it became muscle memory. It was second nature for you. The same thing is true of pronunciation. I've witnessed a lot of people, very intelligent, very bright people, move on to verb conjugation and some conversational skills that were still struggling with their pronunciation of Italian. whether that be how the vowels were pronounced or cognates like GN or GLI, etc. And so when they would go to converse, they really had to sit and think about how that word was pronounced, as opposed to someone that really, really focused when they were studying on that pronunciation, so that when they got to those points in their study of Italian, they weren't worried about the basics and they were able to focus on the things that they were studying at that moment. That is the importance of learning the pronunciation. Why the alphabet along with pronunciation? Because I believe in the latter classes where they're being taught solely in Italian, if you're not sure what a word is and someone spells it out to you, if you don't know the pronunciation of the Italian alphabet, you're going to have trouble there as well. So I think the alphabet and pronunciation are critically important to study. I think you need to practice them. For instance, and the way I teach pronunciation, to be honest with you, I dumb it down. It's actually just a little bit different than the way that I teach it. There is inflection in a few of the letters. For instance, what we would call an English E or an Italian A, because you have the A for and the A for is, which sound a little bit different. But for simplification processes, because I believe in starting simple and then we expound on it, we modify it, we refine it, I just go A. So the 5 vowels, for instance, in Italian are A, E, O, U. And so even if it's just a matter of A, E, O, U, A, E, O, U, over and over and over again, work on that for a week. I mean, get it to where you don't even have to think about it anymore. That's the way that you need to do it. And, if you really focus on pronunciation in this manner, you will be prepared to move on and you'll have a much easier time in your Italian lessons later on. So tip number 1, don't make the first mistake. Get the basics down pat. Now, if you're interested, or for those that are interested, if you haven't worked on those, if you really haven't studied pronunciation, and once again, I'm not perfect. Il mio italiano non è perfetto. Io non sono fluente. Sto ancora imparando. I'm still learning, okay? I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm fluent or my way of Italian is the best. But it works, and a lot of people like it, and I believe that I present it in an easy way. So if you're interested in seeing, and these are free, so I'm not benefiting by this financially, but if you're interested in seeing the pronunciations on Il Tavolo Italiano, I was just going to show them to you real quick. Don't know if I'll be able to zoom in far enough for you to see the screen here. Here's the IlTavoloItaliano.com website, if you haven't been there. And once you get to this website, if you go up to where it says Learning, up in the top bar there, and come down and click Italian. And please excuse my computer. I'm having some computer issues as well as connection issues, so it's running a little slow. And by clicking on this, you're going to eventually, once this computer gets up to speed, hopefully here, well, it may not work. We'll give it another second. But just in case this doesn't work, once you click on this, you will see a list of the classes that I've created to help people learn Italian. And in that, you should see a 6-week pronunciation course. It's laid out week by week, week 1 through week 6. I recommend that you go through that information 1 week at a time. There's some videos, there's some vocabulary to practice the pronunciation you're learning on, and just go through this and really get this pronunciation down pat and see how you do. I apologize, this doesn't appear like it's going to work. Well, mi dispiace. So much for the screenshot of the class. But remember, once again, all you have to do is you go back to iltavoloitaliano.com. And this is my computer, by the way. It's not the website. The website's working. My computer is bad right now. But go to the iltavoloitaliano.com website, go to the top, click on Learning, and then click on Italian. We'll take you to a list of the Italian classes and look for the pronunciation class. And don't make the first mistake. Really study it. Okay? So grazie mille. I hope this first tip helps you in your study of Italian. We have many more coming. I'm excited about it. And we get into some things that you can do around the house and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But first is first, and the first thing is let's get that foundation down pat, okay? Ciao e parlo italiano.